Now, what about up a hill? Okay, the best diesel trucks can only do 45 miles an hour up a 5% grade. Tesla Semi can do 65 miles an hour up to 5% grade.
Thanks for joining us once again. Today we focus on primarily something we call the shadow fleet. As you just saw on the screen, we got a note from one of our viewers regarding the fact that the 5,000 orders that Tesla has on the Semi seems a little bit shady based on how Elon tends to operate relative to orders. So I decided to do a quick follow-on to the show we did for the semi-truck versus the million orders for the Cybertrucks. And you'll see why. So this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. We also want to encourage you to join us on Patreon if you enjoy our show. Would like better ideas on investing and trading, as well as on Tesla Insights. So what I wanted to focus on today is the fact that there's a question mark about the 5,000 orders. As you may recall, one of the many reasons why Tesla only got 5,000 orders is because they're requiring $250K in essence up front. And that could be between 1 and 2 years before you see any trucks. So the ability of firms to commit to that amount of capital was limited in number of large sort of distribution entities that could afford that. But they did draw numbers from some fairly large folks. For example, the largest buyer currently is between Canadian Walmart and US Walmart operations, officially 150 units. The first of sort of 5 concepts we want to present today is something that I call the shadow fleet. So if an entity has signed up to buy 20 to 50 trucks, they are in essence setting up a facility that will set them up process-wise to how they will handle their fleets in the future. So, for example, in the case of Walmart, they do have California operations. If those operations are successful in what they're doing, the numbers pencil out, they'll transfer those efficiencies to other places because it adds value, not necessarily because it's electric. So in general, what a lot of the large fleets are doing is using their initial purchase of Tesla vehicles as a way to line up what their plan will be in the future. Again, in the case of Walmart, they have 5,000 tractors just in the US. We haven't considered Canada or other places. So the potential there for them to expand the network that they're working on, I think, is huge. The next thing that we wanted to review is that the whole Tesla electric space has what I want to call a competitive advantage in California. And what do I mean by that competitive advantage? Well, it turns out that one of the main reasons that California has huge pollution is not only because of the cars that GM forced on them by buying up all the train tracks and ripping it out of the ground, but because it has one of the most important and largest ports in the world. There's Long Beach Port, there's also Los Angeles Port, and there's the Oakland Port. So those 3 ports equal perhaps half of all the freight that moves from Asia into the United States. And that's a huge number. This is a competitive advantage for Tesla for a whole host of reasons. The primary reason is the fees that are helping to pay $400,000 to $500,000 per truck are all coming from all that freight being overcharged by the authorities in California to help deal with the pollution problem. And there are 2 sectors of this pollution that are the largest that they're trying to control. Number one, the pollution coming off the port from all the ships that are docking or sitting out in that area idling. Another area is that maybe 25% of the freight exits the port by train, but the rest of that freight is exiting the port for various length travel inland. And that could mean anywhere from the Inland Empire to the Bay Area of Cali, or south, or even, let's say Phoenix. But once you go through all those places, you're picking up another 30 or 40% of where that freight is going, and theoretically could go nationwide as well, but it would be as efficient as coming into the California port per se if it was on truck. So what's happening then is that it's real easy to pay for semis if you're the Port of Los Angeles at a fee, $10, $20 per container. A few 100,000 containers later, those $500,000 trucks are actually very cheap. So hence, in this case, Daimler and the former Freightliner has aggressively entered that space with their e-Cascadias. And so so number one, we've dealt with the shadow fleets, the fact that there are a lot of companies doing initial buys just to preserve a place in the line so they could become a lot larger. The next issue is how fleets tend to build out. Typically, their vehicles are on leases of different lengths. Let's say it's over a 10-year period that a fleet is sort of built or torn down. Well, what'll happen there is that each year, as more trucks come off lease, we'll make that switch. The next thing I wanted to review today is there are many differences between how consumers view things and how businesses view things. When it comes to consumers, how does it look, and all these other things may be a factor. When it comes to businesses, no company can afford to be at a competitive disadvantage to another entity. And if the disadvantage is large between what the Tesla Semi offers and what their current trucking fleet offers, those individuals and entities are willing to make that transition, and they'll be happy to do so regardless of whatever else is going on with the company. So as you'll notice, Tesla has deliberately, and Elon deliberately presented parameters. For example, the 45 miles per hour versus 65 miles per hour up a major grade. We have several sort of large mountains, in particular the biggest one being the one in the Sierra Madre. That difference in grade climbing could equal between 1 hour and maybe an hour and a half of time for that truck across those mountains. So the chances are very high then that all a company would have to do is look at how many trucks they're running, deduct the amount of time it takes for the Tesla Semi to cross those mountains, and they can justify, if the fuel is comparable electricity versus diesel, they could easily justify the transition based on driver time and delivery times that are associated with those vehicles. So what I'm heading towards here is the fact that there's a Game of Thrones or a war that goes on between different solutions. If the solution you're offering, add everything up, puts the company at a competitive advantage over previous options, it's a lot easier for companies to make that decision than it is for individuals, because they can attach real dollars to that transition. The next thing that I'd like to review is the fact that, yes, electricity is currently a challenge, but as soon as that network is built out by Tesla on a systematic basis, that's going to have a huge impact. Now, we're staying domestic primarily. It's my belief that the Tesla Semi, as you see here, might be a waste of time in the United States. The reason is because I'm obsessed with a place called Stuttgart, Germany. Stuttgart, a little bit Los Angeles, is a bowl where when the wind blows or pollution is produced, it's a bowl into which you have large amounts of pollution that just sits. It's been claimed that as many as 3,800 people a year are dying because of the pollution impact. So when it comes to Europe, particularly places like Stuttgart, the aggressiveness of the folks from the EU as well as Germany in penalizing trucking companies that don't make the transition to a clean form of energy in the form of, it could be electric, but it could be hydrogen. In essence, Daimler has been developing both hydrogen and electric solutions and presenting them. It's amazing that the trucking side of Daimler is actually enduring fines if they don't figure out the emissions reduction that Tesla has achieved. And so I'm fascinated because it's my belief that, there are 1 million vehicles that are sold each year in the Class 8 category. Half of those fit the parameters of the Tesla Semi without having a day cab, back of the truck that allows a driver to sleep in the truck. And so it's my belief if Tesla meets its performance parameters and the charging is available, they in essence have the potential to take as much as half of that market. On a global basis, that's 250 to 300,000 vehicles. In the United States, that's about 125,000 vehicles per annum that people will be buying from Tesla instead of others. Now, there's a whole bunch of provisos to this. Obviously, the biggest one is we're targeting initially trucks in operating environments that aren't super hot or super cold to address the needs of those batteries. But I believe that we're going to see through new technology an ability for electric vehicles, particularly Tesla's semis, to handle more challenging temperature-wise spaces. So in general, the question was posed, is it a real 5,000 units of order for Tesla? Well, if you look around, pretty much in 10 years, we're at the point where all the trucks for United Parcel Service, all the trucks for the post office, all the trucks for DHL, all these Class 8 trucks that comfortably operate in California now are done. And so this means that that sort of electric or clean, whatever process that is, it could be hydrogen, whatever wins, ends up with a huge potential market for vehicles starting in California. And eventually it'll probably migrate to other places because California is such an important customer for so many folks. And if Elon hits his parameters and add everything up, time, difference in cost of fuel, etc., you end up with a really awesome situation where the mandate to change and affect the planet happens. And I believe that it's definitely on the table for a successful outcome. So, yes, it is only 5,000 orders, but those entities are using those orders as test orders for the transition to vehicles into their entire fleet. And so when you have a company like Walmart, let's say, that has, again, 5,000 tractors in the United States, and they're cycling in and out of lease, I believe it's every 3 years, but it may be 5 years, that leaves a lot of room for more orders to be placed once it works. And particularly when California won't allow anything but electric or sort of non-polluting to hit its streets, it exacerbates the problem. So kudos to Tesla for initiating this process. I really believe that you should fill up the initial orders in the US and hit Europe because there's a lot more of a commitment there, and they're fighting companies for not making the transition in ways the United States is not. So therefore, I just think that it's a great thing that the Tesla Semi has been created. I think it's a great thing, the possibility of change that it represents. And there's a great business reason to do so because you're at a competitive advantage to other companies if you don't. So we look forward to that transition happening. This is the end of our formal Tesla comments. Next, we move on to our health tips as usual. Of late, I've been sort of obsessed learning about the transition in terms of types of oil. Seed oils, it's been recommended by numerous doctors, that's a bad way to go. There's a lot more of an encouragement towards avocado oil as well as extra virgin olive and virgin olive oil, and you guys can read about some of the differences and the benefits that go with it. I also wanted to encourage you to consider something called Celtic salt that I've been learning about but having a hard time finding it. I may have to go the Amazon route to make that happen. At any rate, once again, thanks for joining us. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Tschüss, au revoir, in Jamaica, we say enough respect, walk, good man, namaste. Have a great day. Bye for now. And we look forward to our next conversation. And we'll have our usual after the show sounds of the ocean again.